Rome, 100 AD. The most powerful city on the planet now has over 1 million inhabitants, but no one sleeps here. The streets smell of smoke, blood, manure, and freshly baked bread. Carts rumble all night, garbage falls from the windows, and beneath this fog, the empire that once ruled the world awakens. This isn't a movie, it's the most realistic reconstruction of ancient Rome. Imagine you are standing on the stones of the Roman Forum. The year is 100 AD, in the first cold days of Januarius, when a damp Mediterranean winter wraps the 7 hills of Rome in a low mist that the rising sun is only now beginning to dissolve. It is 6 in the morning, and the most powerful city on earth is waking up. The smell hits you first: burning wood, animal dung, and the warm yeast breath of bread being pulled from ovens by pistores, the Roman bakers, who have been at work since long before first light. Under the reign of Emperor Marcus Ulpius Traianus, Rome holds more than 1 million inhabitants. It is the first city in Western history to reach that number. What you are seeing has been reconstructed using artificial intelligence, drawing on the letters of Pliny the Younger, the satires of Juvenal and Martial, and decades of archaeological work beneath the streets of modern Rome. Rome, in the year 100, is a live organism, chaotic and sublime in the same breath. The city contains 46,000 insulae, apartment blocks rising as high as 7 stories, and 1,800 private domas, the grand townhouses of the patrician class. 11 aqueducts deliver over 1 billion liters of fresh water into the city every single day, flowing into public fountains at every neighborhood corner, into the bathhouses, into the communal latrines. Rome smells of concentrated humanity, but also of laurel, olive oil, and the incense burning without pause at the temples of the Capitoline Hill. Across the 7 hills, the first light paints terracotta roof tiles and forum marble in amber and pale gold. The noise is immediate and absolute. Carts loaded with goods, banned from the city during daylight hours, are completing their final runs of the night, their iron-rimmed wheels grinding against basalt paving stones with a sound that the poet Juvenal described with full bitterness as a torment that made sleep in Rome impossible. Rome banned wheeled traffic inside the city during daylight hours to prevent gridlock, which meant the streets thundered with carts and animals all night long. Juvenal wrote that only the very wealthy, who could afford thick-walled houses away from the main roads, ever got a full night's sleep in Rome. If this kind of content moves you, history breathing again before your eyes, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Myths and Dust. Every subscription is what keeps these forgotten worlds alive.
Roma y la buena vida. Que los dioses nos sigan bendiciendo con banquetes como este.
We move into the Subura, Rome's densest, loudest, and most alive neighborhood, wedged between the Esquiline and Viminal hills. The streets here are so narrow that 2 people standing on opposing balconies could reach out and touch hands. The ground is wet with things you would rather not identify. Despite the 144 kilometers of the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's great sewer system, many tenants on the upper floors of these apartment blocks simply throw their waste from the window with a shouted warning. Experienced pedestrians walk close to the walls. The insula we enter has 6 floors. The ground level is lined with tabernae, small shops opening directly onto the street, a butcher's, a thermopolium selling hot stews and wine to passers-by, a cobbler's workshop where the smell of tanned leather cuts through the morning air. On the first floor lives a family of the middling sort, Gaius Petronius Rufus, a freedman who has built modest wealth trading olive oil from Hispania, his wife Claudia, and their 3 children. Step inside. The apartment is smaller than you expect. A narrow corridor opens into a cubicle, the main sleeping room, barely 4 meters square. The walls are painted deep ochre red with friezes of birds and garlands, not decoration for decoration's sake, but the Roman solution to making a cramped space feel larger and warmer. There is no fireplace. Heat comes from a bronze brazier burning charcoal, its thin smoke drifting into wool hangings and slowly perfuming everything in the room. The beds are wooden frames strung with rope and topped with wool-stuffed mattresses. The window has no glass. Glass windows exist in Rome, but they are expensive and rare, and is instead covered with oiled cloth that admits a milky, diffuse light and keeps out most of the cold. Remarkable fact. The Roman businessman Marcus Licinius Crassus built one of history's first private fire brigades, not out of civic duty, but profit. When a building caught fire, he would buy it from the panicked owner for almost nothing, extinguish the flames with his slave brigade, then resell the property at full value. Public fire brigades, the vigiles, didn't exist until Emperor Augustus created them in 6 AD.
Gaius wakes before sunrise. His first obligation is to his lares, the household gods, whose small terracotta figures occupy a painted niche in the corridor wall, the lararium. He sets down a few grains of spelt and a small clay cup of honey. The gods have been acknowledged. Then he dresses, a wool tunic in undyed white with a narrow stripe, the angustus clavus, that marks his rank as a prosperous freedman, not a senator, and over it, on this cold morning, a dark lacerna, a hooded wool cloak. His leather sandals click against the mosaic floor of the corridor as he moves toward the door.
Breakfast is quick and eaten standing. A piece of panis secundarius, the coarser brown bread of the working classes, darker and denser than the fine white loaves reserved for the patrician table, dipped in olive oil or in posca, that Roman staple of water and wine vinegar that functions much as coffee does for us, sharp, bracing, a thing to jolt the body into motion. Alongside it, a handful of black olives from Hispania, a wedge of sheep's milk cheese, a few dried figs. The kitchen in Gaius's apartment is minimal, a small brick hearth with 2 rings, because cooking in a 6-story timber and terracotta building is a serious fire risk. The poorest residents of the upper floors do not cook at all. Every meal comes from the thermopolia on the street below. By 7 in the morning, Gaius descends to the forum to manage his business affairs. Claudia organizes the household with the help of 2 domestic slaves. Syra, a Greek woman of around 40, purchased at the slave market of Delos, and Philon, a young Egyptian who handles the daily shopping. The Roman working day runs from sunrise to noon. The afternoon belongs to leisure, the baths, and the main meal of the day.
Careful with that pottery, it's fragile.
What do Romans actually eat? The answer dismantles almost every assumption. The midday meal, the prandium, is light: bread, olives, cheese, dried fruit, perhaps sardines in brine, or soft-boiled eggs. But dinner is the great Roman institution. Gaius sets a table that reflects his station without overreaching it. 3 courses served on Eretine ware, the glossy red ceramic from Arezzo that imitates the silver plate only senators can afford. The gustatia arrives first, a scatter of hard-boiled eggs dressed with garum, the fermented fish sauce that Romans use the way we use salt, present on every table from the poorest insula to the most lavish patrician dining room, alongside oil-cured lettuce, black olives, and small anchovy fillets. The prima mensa follows, a thick lentil and leek stew, fragrant with coriander, a joint of roasted lamb glazed with cuminatum, a sauce of cumin, honey, and vinegar carried by trade routes from the kitchens of the Near East, and a fresh-baked white loaf. For the secunda mensa, the sweet course, baked apples drizzled with Attic honey, Corinthian raisins, and walnuts from Gaul. The wine is Falernian, diluted with warm water and poured from an amphora sealed with pitch. Drinking wine undiluted is, in Rome, the mark of a barbarian. The garum deserves a moment of its own. This sauce is made by layering fish, anchovies, mackerel, the organs of larger fish with coarse salt in great stone vats, and leaving the entire mass to ferment under the open sun for months at a time. The smell during production is, by all accounts, devastating. The finished product, reduced and filtered, is something else entirely. Deeply savory, salt-forward, rich with that quality we now call umami. Pliny the Elder called it the most precious liquid after perfume. The best grades, imported from factories along the coast of Hispania, cost as much as fine fragrance. Remarkable fact: the finest garum, Garum sociorum from Hispania, was worth, by volume, roughly the equivalent of a Roman legionary's monthly wages for a single amphora. It was Rome's truffle oil, its aged balsamic, its Michelin-starred condiment, and it sat on the table of the poor and the powerful alike. At 2 in the afternoon, when the morning's business is done and the winter sun has warmed the Subura stones to something almost comfortable, Gaius takes his stridulus, a curved bronze scraping tool, his flask of scented olive oil, and walks to the baths of Trajan, inaugurated just 2 years ago on the crest of the Esquiline Hill, built directly over the ruins of Nero's Domus Aurea. The baths are not simply a place to wash, they are the social heart of Rome, part gymnasium, part library, part marketplace, part debating hall. Admission costs a quadrans, the smallest Roman coin. For all practical purposes, it is free. The ritual of the Roman bath follows a fixed sequence. First, the apoditerium, the changing room, where clothes are left under the watch of a slave attendant. Then the tepidarium, the warm room to ease the body into the heat. Next, the caldarium, where steam opens the pores. Romans do not use soap. They apply olive oil to the skin and scrape it off with the strigidus, taking sweat, dirt, and dead skin with it. Finally, the frigidarium, the cold plunge pool, which closes the pores and shocks the system back to full wakefulness. The whole process takes 2 hours. Business deals are struck here. Poetry is recited here. Senators and freedmen scrape their skins side by side. The philosopher Seneca, who once lived above a set of baths in Naples, complained at length in his letters about the noise, the grunts of men exercising, the splash of water, the cries of vendors selling sausages and pastries in the corridors outside. What makes the baths of Trajan extraordinary, and this is worth pausing on, is the engineering underneath them. The entire complex is heated by a hypercaust system, hollow floors and double walls through which hot air circulates continuously, generated by wood-burning furnaces tended by slaves working in the basement. Rome had underfloor radiant heating nearly 2,000 years before the rest of the world called it modern. Remarkable fact. The baths of Trajan could accommodate more than 6,000 bathers simultaneously. The complex included a library with separate Latin and Greek reading rooms, gardens for walking, and open-air exercise courts. It was, in the truest sense, a public wellness center, free at the door, funded by the emperor, available to every citizen of Rome, regardless of class.
Have you finished your exercise?
Evening falls over Rome like a curtain dropped from the Janiculum. By 5 o'clock, the sun is gone behind the western hills, and the Subura plunges into darkness, relieved only by the oil lamps of open shops, the torches held by slaves escorting their masters home through streets that belong, after dark, to a different and less forgiving city. Without public street lighting, the roads become the territory of thieves and the endless rumble of the night carts resuming their daytime routes. Juvenal advised any man walking Rome at night to make his peace with the gods beforehand and write his will in the morning. Inside the apartment, Claudia has lit the oil lamps, small terracotta lucernae, each burning a thumb's worth of olive oil, and arranged them around the triclinium where the family gathers after the evening meal. Gaius reads aloud from a set of wax tablets a friend has lent him, passages from Pliny's latest letters. The children play with their bulla, the gold amulet that freeborn Roman children wear from birth until the day they come of age, and with small terracotta figurines sold at market stalls near the Forum. Syra sits at the edge of the lamplight, working a spindle. The brazier ticks and breathes. Through the oiled cloth window comes the sound of the street below, a cart, a dog, a man singing badly somewhere near the fountain. Before bed, one last visit to the lararium, a small honey cake, a few drops of wine pressed into the clay dish at the feet of the household gods. The lares have held the house through another day. The family retreats to their cubiculi, pulls wool blankets over wool tunics, and settles into the particular discomfort and intimacy of Roman domestic life, close together, never quite warm enough, never quite quiet, sustained by the rhythms of a city that does not stop. This city will not last forever. 2.5 centuries from now, the empire will begin its long unraveling. In 410 AD, the Visigoths of This city will not last forever. 2.5 centuries from now, the empire will begin its long unraveling. In 410 AD, the Visigoths of Alaric will sack Rome for the first time in 800 years, and the world will understand that something has fundamentally changed. But tonight, in the year 100, under the rule of the emperor who will push the empire to its greatest territorial extent, none of that is legible in the stones of the Subura or the lamplight of Gaius's apartment. Rome is not declining. Rome is the world. And 1 million people sleep tonight inside its walls, dreaming in Latin, utterly certain that what they have built will stand forever, which is, perhaps, the most human thing about them.
Remarkable fact. Trajan's market, built alongside his forum between 100 and 112 AD, is considered history's first shopping mall. 150 shops across 6 levels, selling spices from Arabia, silk from China, papyrus from Egypt, wines from Hispania, and metals from Britain, all under one roof in a concrete structure so well engineered that significant portions of it still stand in Rome today. If this walk in ancient Rome stayed with you, share myths and dust with someone who would feel it too, and leave us a comment. Which forgotten world do you want us to rebuild next? The Ottoman Empire at its height, Florence under the Medici, Chang'an at the center of the Tang dynasty. The past is still out there, waiting in the dust.